In this video, we're going to be talking about the recent general election that occurred in Spain. Now, Spain is a country with a very polarized and fractured political environment, one that has forced the country to go to the elections many times over the past few years. And I want to give an overview of what happened in the election, what was expected to happen based on the polls, and a quick look at the Spanish electoral system. If you are new to this channel, welcome. I am an American who is currently an intern in the German Bundestag. The main focus of this channel, of course, is going to be German politics, but for major elections like this one and the Dutch elections that are going to be upcoming, I will be covering those as well. German politics, of course, is like my specialty. I know the most about that, but I am still familiar enough with the politics of other European countries to kind of give a brief overview. Now, we had an election that occurred, and this was a snap election. It was supposed to be a few months from now, but the current ruling party in Spain, the Socialist Party, did very poorly in regional elections that occurred a few months prior, and so the incumbent Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, called snap elections. And what was expected to happen was, after a long rule of the Socialist Party and their kind of more left-wing allies, which have been in power for years now, they were expected to lose, and the right-wing coalition, or the right-wing parties of the Popular Party or the People's Party in blue and the more right-wing Vox Party were expected to take over. However, this didn't happen. They were ahead in the polls, and there were a lot of polls that expected they could win an outright majority, but there were also a lot that said they would fall short. And although they came first, the People's Party came ahead of the Socialists, and together the Vox and the People's Party have more than the Socialist Party and the new left-wing Populist Party. They do not have a majority. And this does not mean that the left won the election, because you have a lot of regional and minority parties in the middle, which are basically preventing one of the two blocks from gaining a majority. And this has been the case in Spanish politics for a while now. Pedro Sanchez and his incumbent government has ruled as a minority government with support of some of the left-wing regionalist parties. For those of you who don't know, in Spain you have a lot of regions such as Catalonia and the Basque Country, where you have a kind of ethnic national minority. They have their own political parties. They want autonomy. In some cases, they want even independence from Spain. And these political parties usually, even if they're left-wing or right-wing, do not work with the nationwide parties, because, of course, a lot of times they want to leave Spain as, a country. The same way you have the Scottish National Party in Scotland that, to a point, wants independence. So this makes it very hard to build a coalition in Spain. And what has basically happened is the same thing. And although the right is ahead of the left, it still looks like they aren't going to have the chance to form a stable government. And what usually this means is you're going to have new elections. And I think that is what's going to be the case here. I think what is probably going to happen is, it's going to be extremely hard for Pedro Sanchez. In order for him to maintain power, he now has to go to the more center-right or conservative regionalist parties, which is going to be very hard for him. I mean, it's going to be next to impossible. So I think the most likely thing is Spain will probably see yet another election within 6 months. I'm not sure what the exact time frame will be, but we will probably see another general election in Spain again, which is a common occurrence because of this, kind of fraction in the parliament. They had elections in, I believe, 2015, 2016. They had two elections in 2019. But another important factor is the rise of the Vox Party. Vox was, until 2019, basically a minor party. It wasn't even showing up on the polling, on the political radar. It was less than 1%. They did very well in regional elections in southern Spain, in the state of Andalusia, where they got 10%. And in the general elections that year, or next year, I think it was 2019, they also got 10%. And eventually, they became the third largest party in the country, as they are now. Now, of course, Spain, with its history under the Franco dictatorship, is similar to Germany, maybe but not quite as strong. You have this kind of taboo, or this feeling that a right-wing party shouldn't come back to power, because a lot of people, especially on the left, associate it with the dictatorship. And so that has been kind of a focus of the campaign. Vox has been portraying the Socialist Party as very left-wing. They've been going hard on cultural issues, on things like, education, things about liberal or left-wing influence in the schools, abortion, and also national identity when it comes to the secessionist states. And at the same time, the left-wing parties have painted Vox as this kind of far-right party and have kind of rallied support to prevent them from coming to power. And it is clear that Vox underperformed, and this is in contrast to the rise of parties like the AfD in Germany. But I think one clear distinction to make is Vox is very similar to the AfD or Marine Le Pen's party in terms of immigration, in terms of cultural issues. However, on foreign policy terms, they are very different. The AfD is a lot more friendly towards Russia, a lot more supportive of spending towards Ukraine. However, Vox is very status quo on this issue. So the AfD is an alternative in terms of foreign policy, whereas Vox does not really stand out from the other parties. And even if the majority of people in Spain might support Ukraine, they are still supporting the politics and the policies of all the other parties. So they don't stand out on that issue as much, and I think that might have hurt them some because when it comes to foreign policy terms, they sound like all the other parties. Now, of course, they are a new party. They are a young party. They're only a few years old. So for them to drop from 15 to 12% is not that big of a deal. And I think also another factor is that the main conservative party had a lot of momentum behind them, and a lot of people ended up voting for them. And I think that's also what happened with the Socialists, the other left-wing populist party, this kind of alliance of a few parties. They also underperformed and lost support. And I think a lot of them also went to the main socialist party of Prime Minister Sanchez. Now, if we look at the polling, we see that for a while now, the conservatives have been the largest party, and then we have this kind of dip right here that happened in 2022. And what happened here was basically the conservatives had a lot of infighting issues, a lot of instability, and we saw Vox rise to about 20%. And so there was this expectation that Vox might even overtake the People's Party. And I think this outcome might have actually been better, and I'll show you in a second, because the Spanish electoral system is a bit weird. But eventually the People's Party did manage to win over against Vox and become once again the clear main right-wing party. They overtook the Socialists, but as you can see at the end, the Socialists kind of made up the deficit and was able to come back, and that prevented the right-wing from winning an outright majority. But nonetheless, the right-wing parties are still ahead. Now I want to take a look right here at the overall results. We see the People's Party and the Socialists both at around 30%, up a little bit above it, and then Vox and the other left-wing party. These are the coalition partners of the two main parties, both around 12. So a 12-point swing for the Conservatives, gaining 47 seats, a big win for them. In the last elections, they had suffered losses, mainly because a lot of voters had went to not only Vox, but this other centrist party called Ciudadanos, a kind of centrist, liberal, center-right party. They have since collapsed, and they have ceased pretty much to exist on the political scene. But we see at the same time Vox lost a bit, and that loss from Vox kind of offset the main victory from the People's Party. And so you see that together, the two parties have 169 seats out of the 176 required. So they're 7 seats behind. So they're close. They're the closest block to a majority, but they still do not reach it. And one of the things I want to talk about real quick, just to overview, is the Spanish electoral system is a bit weird. Now, the Spanish electoral system uses proportional representation, which means that the percentage of vote you get is the percentage of seats. However, the way it's done is much different than, for example, Germany or the Netherlands or some of the Nordic countries, where in those countries, it's done nationwide. In Spain, it's done on kind of a state or district level. And this kind of does some things to the mathematics. Because in Germany, if you get 10% of the vote, you get 10% of the seats. Well, in Spain, if you get 10% of the vote, it applies to each specific region. So what that means is some of these states, or some of these districts rather, have only, for example, 3 seats. And what it means is effectively, if there's 3 seats, you have to effectively get 33% to win one of those seats. So it is very hard for the third parties to win seats, because they can win 10% of vote in all these little districts with 3 seats in them, but that's not enough to win any of those seats. And so all those votes are effectively wasted. And what this means is, of course, different than Britain or the US, it is possible for third parties to win a large amount of seats. However, the Spanish electoral system, the way it's set up, and also the map specifically, it benefits the major two parties, and it also benefits the minority parties or the regional parties, because they are going to be heavily focused, like the Catalonian parties in Catalonia and the Basque parties up here in the north in the Basque country. Since they are regional parties, they're going to have a strong appeal in those specific districts where you have the kind of ethnic minorities, and the major parties are going to be able to win in these smaller districts. So it's kind of overall a detriment to parties like Vox and Sumar, the former Podemos or the Ciudadanos parties, and that is just kind of a unique aspect of the Spanish electoral system. There's other countries like it, but that is one thing to take into account, and I think that has definitely made it harder to form coalitions, because a lot of times, if you were to have the German system where these minority parties were required to get, a certain percentage of the vote, they couldn't. Because, of course, you're talking about multiple parties competing for a small section of the country. You see the left-wing and right-wing Catalonian parties together are at around 3-4%. But they're concentrated, so they're able to win those seats. And so I think the electoral system in Spain is definitely creating some issues. As we see, we had election after election where neither two of the national blocs are able to win a majority. And I think, after a certain point, we are going to have a discussion in Spain over the long-term sustainability of this system. I don't know how long this can last, because if you're having to hold election after election and things in the economy are going bad, or I'm not saying they are, but if you're in a crisis and you're having to hold election after election and you can't have a stable majority, there's inevitably going to be discussion about the electoral system, and we could see even kind of a reform to maybe push out the regionalist parties, because even the left and the right are going to be very eager to kind of get rid of them. But of course, the Catalonians and the Basques are very patriotic, very nationalistic. They have their own interest, and they are going to push back against that. So overall, we see pretty much a deadlock in Spain. The right did better. They won the election, technically doing better than the left. This is kind of technically still the end of Pedro Sanchez's long rule of Spain, but nonetheless, political deadlock. We might see a coalition be worked out, but I think that's probably going to be unlikely. We're most likely going to see another election within a few months. In that case, I think it's fair to say that the right will win again. However, I don't think it's so easy to say that they are going to win an outright majority. And, what can happen from there is we can only see. So I just wanted to give you guys an update on this situation in Spain, and we will see if there is any more developments. I might do another video, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope this gave you some of the basic information, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.